If you're a diehard football fan, you've come to the right place. This is the Football Game Tonight podcast. I'm your host, John Kuzma, where we talk about all the latest pro football news in action. So we got a great lineup for you guys today. We're going to talk a little bit about Bryce Huff. We're going to do the Kyle Pitts story. I know people are talking about that. Stefon Diggs, is he in trouble already with the Patriots? We're going to talk about that one. Geno Smith and why he can be an X factor for the Raiders. I know you guys would like to hear that. And then we're going to finish the show off later on with the George Pickens story. George Pickens is now on the Cowboys. I know some people are excited about that one. So let's get right to our ticker and work our way down the list. Starting first, the trending story right now is the Bryce Huff story. So the Eagles have agreed to trade Bryce Huff to the 49ers. And the deal is basically done, but it can't officially happen until later on. And but it's going to go through. It's going to get done. Bryce Huff is going to be a 49er. And I understand what the 49ers are thinking here. Because, you know, Bryce Huff was on the Eagles last year, won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, but his best days came as a Jet with Robert Saleh as the head coach. Now that Robert Saleh is back with the 49ers are thinking, hey, if we get Bryce Huff from the Eagles and we implement him in this defense and he reunites with Robert Saleh where he played his best football, then we might be able to get a steal from the Eagles who want to offload him because Bryce Huff wasn't the same player with the Eagles. I know the Eagles won the Super Bowl, but Bryce Huff just wasn't the same player that he was with the Jets. And a lot of Eagles fans were actually happy to see Bryce Huff leave because he didn't live up to the hype with the Eagles. So Bryce Huff is going to the 49ers. The 49ers think they might have hit a jackpot because they're like, okay, if we can get this guy for a bargain rate, and we can put him on that defensive front with the rest of the guys we have, you know, Nick Bosa, really good player, you know, so you put Bryce Huff opposite of Nick Bosa, and if Bryce Huff can be the guy that he was with the Jets and not the player that he was with the Eagles, this could be a big steal for the 49ers. So you can totally understand where the 49ers are coming from in this one because they're like, we're going to get him back in that Robert Saleh scheme where he does his very best work, and we're going to get him for a bargain from the Eagles. And it's not hard to connect the dots on this one if you're the 49ers. They think they're going to get a guy that is being shipped out by the Eagles that can come in and make a huge impact for them. So really it's about, you know, being back with Robert Saleh, a guy that he gels with, being in Robert Saleh's system where he did his very best work, being on a 49ers team where he gets a fresh start, where, you know, he didn't really hit the ground running with the Eagles, didn't really fit in their system. So to be with Robert Saleh, be with the 49ers, get a fresh start, and hopefully be the player that he was with the Jets. You know, if he does turn back the page to his Jets days, this could be a big upgrade for the 49ers because now you have Nick Bosa. Now you have Bryce Huff back in that Robert Shanahan system. And those guys are pinning their ears back, coming off the edge and getting to the quarterback. And that pocket's collapsing because they're firing off the edges so strong that, you know, you have to step up. And then that interior pass rush from the 49ers kind of eats you up as well. I can see the 49ers vision on this one. That's all I'm going to say. I think it's low risk with, you know, not having to overpay to get Bryce Huff because the Eagles were just shipping him out anyway. I think it can be a big impact with a very high upside with the fact that you're reuniting Robert Saleh and Bryce Huff. I think getting a fresh start is going to be good for him as well. When I go down the list and I check all these boxes, it just makes sense for the 49ers, and it makes sense for Bryce Huff because he needed this. It clearly wasn't working with the Eagles. he wasn't going to be the same player with the Eagles, and the Eagles wouldn't be so inclined to just wash their hands of Bryce Huff if it was working out. They washed their hands with him because it wasn't working out, and Bryce Huff wasn't what the Eagles had hoped for. So for the 49ers, I think it can be the exact opposite of what it was with the Eagles. I really do. Just because scheme and fit and the relationships around you, whether it's coach or the players around you, those things matter so much in football. You know, how many times have we seen a really good quarterback go to a bad team and that quarterback struggles and becomes basically a nobody? Then he leaves that team, goes to a really good team, and you're like, oh, this is what we thought he was going to be when he came out of college. It's because systems, relationships, personnel, those things matter, man. They matter. And when you're in a system that's conducive to that player's success, it brings out the best of them. That's the type of situation I could see for the 49ers and for a team that's always in the hunt. Every single year, the 49ers are in the hunt. You know, this past year, ton of injuries. It is what it is. But we know who this regime is with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. And they've run into injuries before. They always seem to bounce back because it's not the way they run their team that causes them to struggle. It's just they get hit with the injury bug. And that happens sometimes in the NFL. It's professional football. The hits are massive at this level. You know, 3 or 4 guys get banged up, and they're key players like a Brandon Ayuk, a Ricky Purcell. You know, look what happens. It can destroy your offense. Deebo Samuel, those guys go down, and suddenly you just don't have the firepower to put points on the board, and the team starts to slide a little bit. Now, with Bryce Huff being there on that defense, if he becomes one of the top rushers in the league again, remember with the Jets, he was coming off that edge with some tenacity and getting to the quarterback and flushing the play out of the pocket. So now quarterbacks on the run flush to the opposite side of the field away from Bryce Huff, but the rhythm of the timing of the play gets completely broken up. He's trying to improv on the fly, make a throw to his receiver. The receivers don't adjust because when your quarterback gets flushed out of the pocket, now your route as a receiver needs to change because you need to work back towards your quarterback. And when that happens, the whole play can break down, and the percentages of having a successful play completely plummet. They completely plummet. It's so hard to get flushed out of the pocket and then improv on the fly and turn nothing into something. You know, the truly great quarterbacks in the league, maybe the guys that are more mobile, like Lamar Jackson or a Michael Vick, can turn those plays into positives. But most of the quarterbacks in the league, when they're dealing with getting flushed out of the pocket, it's a dead play for them because they just got to throw it away. They put themselves in a bad position where maybe they throw an interception or they just run out of bounds and take the loss. That's what Bryce Huff can do for this 49ers defense because he's coming off with his tenacity. We know Joey Bosa, one of the best defenders in the whole entire league. We know what he brings to the table in terms of getting to the quarterback and generating a pass rush. Nobody can debate how good Joey Bosa is, so I like the tandem of, or not Joey Bosa, excuse me, Nick Bosa. So we can't downplay just how good this tandem of Nick Bosa and Bryce Huff can be. They can be very good. I said Joey Bosa, I meant Nick Bosa. My apologies, Nick Bosa. But that's just how it's going to pan out for the 49ers. You know, when you have those two dynamic players at the defense end positions that can, like I said, get upfield and get to the quarterback and bring the quarterback down in the backfield for a sack. You know, that helps your defense get off the field, especially on third downs when it matters the most. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Nick Bosa and what Bryce Huff can do for the 49ers. I think they're going to be very good at, just generating a pass rush for this 49ers defense. So I like the move for the 49ers deciding to trade for Bryce Huff. And Robert Saleh was in those meetings with the front office, pounding the table and saying, go get this guy. The Eagles don't want him. Go get this guy. Bring him over here because he can be a big help for our team. I think it's a smart decision for the 49ers. Moving on. We have the Kyle Pitts story. So I have to admit, coming out of Florida, I thought Kyle Pitts was going to be one of the best tight ends we've ever seen. Thought he was going to be up there with the Tony Gonzalez's, the Rob Gronkowski's, and the rest of the all-time greats we've seen. Kellen Winslow Sr., Travis Kelce. I thought he was going to be that type of player just because he was so fluid and he ran so well. Just a fast tight end that could get separation. And even though it was in a tight end's body, was more like a wide receiver when it came to his speed and, just how fluid he was. For whatever reason, Kyle Pitts has not lived up to the hype. And that's just the reality of the situation. I know some people are saying maybe the Atlanta Falcons should trade Kyle Pitts. It's time to cut the cord and move on and things like that. I always like retaining talent and hoping that maybe things change eventually, although we've been disappointed season after season when it comes to Kyle Pitts. He's never lived up to the hype, so to say. But, that's just the truth of the situation, whether you're a Falcons fan or not. With how high expectations were for Kyle Pitts, he's failed to live up to the bar. And I don't know what it is. People say, well, this quarterback, that quarterback, Kirk Cousins couldn't get him the ball, Michael Penix couldn't get him the ball, and Desmond Ridder couldn't get him the ball. At some point, you have to put the blame on Kyle Pitts because all the things that worked when he was with the Gators in college have not translated over to the pros. He can't get separation like that. He's not making the big splash plays that made him one of the most coveted tight end prospects we've ever seen coming out of Florida. I don't know how to explain this situation. How does a guy that runs so well consistently fail to get separation at the next level? And a guy that's clearly faster than most of the tight ends we've seen. I think about one of the fastest tight ends I've ever seen, Vernon Davis, with the 49ers. I mean, that guy was a burner, super fast. But Kyle Pitts, when you're talking about the fastest tight ends we've ever seen, Kyle Pitts is a burner, man. But for some reason, he's not having the big impact like we saw in the past with Vernon Davis. It's just not there. It's not working out for whatever reason. So I don't know what the Falcons are supposed to do. I think for the sake of keeping as many offensive weapons as you possibly can have, I think if I was the Falcons, I would keep them just to, you have Drake London, you have Kyle Pitts, you have the rest of the guys they have there. I'm keeping as many offensive weapons as I possibly can keep, just because you need guys that can get open and put some points on the board. And maybe Kyle Pitts has underperformed every step of the way, but if he can just contribute a little bit, that's better than nothing, so I would keep him. But there's no denying he's failed to live up to expectations. Nobody can sit here and argue with me that Kyle Pitts has, delivered the goods. He hasn't. He hasn't delivered the goods. He hasn't been good enough. He's struggled. He's been a shade of the player that we saw at Florida with the Gators, where he looked like most of the time the most explosive player on the field. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I don't think it's a lack of preparation. I don't think the guy got lazy or anything. I think sometimes with players, it just doesn't work out how we think it's going to work out. And like I said, I thought this guy was going to be one of the greatest tight end prospects we've ever seen. And I thought he was going to be one of the all-time greats. I really did. So I was a little bit let down by Kyle Pitts. But it is what it is, man. You take it for what it is, and you change his role. You want his role to be a superstar on your team. But unfortunately for the Falcons, Kyle Pitts' role is just contributor. You were hoping for superstar. Instead, you got a contributor. It hurts. I'm a Lions fan, and I'm looking on the outside in. I'm looking at the Falcons, and it hurts me just because I thought this guy was going to be so good, and I thought it was such a good pick for the Falcons. It hasn't worked out. It hasn't been good enough. It's been disappointing, to say the least. Do I get rid of him if I'm the Falcons? Absolutely not. You keep him. You keep as many weapons as you can if you're the Falcons because you have to score points. And you don't want to hurt Michael Penix's chances of, succeeding. He's taking over the reins for Kirk Cousins. He's going to be the guy this year. If you ship Kyle Pitts out and you send him packing, you hurt Michael Penix's chances of being successful. That's the last thing you want to do to Penix in his first full season as a starter. He's getting a chance to be the face of this franchise, so you can't diminish his chances of success by sending Kyle Pitts packing. You can't do that to Michael Penix because it will hurt his chances of being successful if he loses a contributor. Now, it would hurt even more if he was losing a superstar, but it's still going to hurt. You cannot lose a contributor, especially a guy that can still maybe generate some plays for you in the red zone, which is so crucial in the National Football League. Being able to put points on the board by converting your trips to the red zone. You can't give up on a player like that. Now, are we going to get the big splash plays, the catch and runs, the long touchdowns where you're like, oh, this guy is a game breaker, changing the outcome of games? Probably not. You're going to have to live with it. If you're the Falcons, though, don't trade him. Keep him. Hopefully things get a little bit better with Penix. Maybe him and Penix have a really good relationship, and he starts to become a focal point of the offense. I'm talking about Kyle Pitts. We'll see. I'm not certain, but that seems to be the way things are heading for the Falcons. I keep him to help Michael Penix, but you have to live with the fact that Kyle Pitts has failed to live up to expectations. There's no other way around it. He's failed to live up to expectations. And some people are saying, well, maybe he needs a fresh start. I mean, it is what it is, man. You got to produce. That's the bottom line. Most guys that are capable of producing, produce no matter what. I look at Brock Bowers on the Raiders, a team, last year at least, that was not loaded with talent. Brock Bowers still delivered the goods. He still got the job done for the Raiders and proved that he has a chance at ascending to be one of the best tight ends in the league. It didn't matter if, things were not going good as a whole for the Raiders. Brock Bowers was still going to come in there and do his part for that football team. So saying, Kyle Pitts just needs a fresh start, sometimes that works, but more often than not, if you have a truly great player, he's going to get the job done no matter where he plays at. So that's the reality of the situation with Kyle Pitts. Moving on, we got the Stefon Diggs story. So Stefon Diggs in trouble already with the Patriots. And man, oh man, oh man. Stefon Diggs. I don't know what to say. The Patriots paid Stefon Diggs. They took care of Stefon Diggs. Remember he was on the Texans last year, had the injury, was recovering from the injury and rehabbing from the injury. The Patriots say, hey, we need a wide receiver for Drake May because we need to generate some offense for this young quarterback that we believe can be the savior of our franchise, a guy that is kind of picking up after Tom Brady left off when Mac Jones couldn't get the job done for the Patriots. So they feel really good about Drake May, which is why the Patriots decided to go out and take a shot on Stefon Diggs, who was coming back from a major injury. So, to me, Stefon Diggs being on this boat and surrounded by women, he's there with Cardi B, a bunch of other women, and in the video, apparently he has drugs in a bag, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing, Stefon Diggs? Like, seriously, what are you doing, man? And this guy, for all the talent he's had going back to Minnesota, has always been problematic. Always been problematic. I remember when he left the Vikings and went to the Bills, I said, you know what? It doesn't matter anyway because Justin Jefferson's going to be better than this guy. Justin Jefferson was better than Stefon Diggs. Justin Jefferson is still better than Stefon Diggs. And which guy would you rather have on your team? The guy Justin Jefferson who's upbeat and a team player, or this guy Stefon Diggs who's been problematic anywhere he goes? Stefon Diggs is a diva. And, you know, the Patriots go out on a limb and take a chance on him when he's recovering from this injury. You know, they pay him the bag, overpay for him. An aging wide receiver coming off an injury who has bounced around from team to team at this point. They overpaid for him, and he's out there on video passing drugs around to girls. I don't know what Stefon Diggs is thinking. You got a really good opportunity with the Patriots. They looked out for you, and you can't even just have the common sense to, you know, I don't think you should be doing that stuff at all. But if you are partaking in that stuff, at least keep it private. At least be smart enough to keep it private where no one can see it. It's always the same old nonsense with Stefon Diggs. I want to be traded from the Vikings. I want to be traded from the Bills. Goes to the Texans, gets injured, leaves the Texans, gets signed by the Patriots. Patriots overpay for an aging wide receiver coming off an injury, and Stefon Diggs gets caught on a boat partying with a bunch of women, doing drugs or passing drugs around, whatever it is. It's not a good look, man. It's not a good look for Stefon Diggs, and the Patriots deserved better than this. They deserved a guy that was going to come in, be a team player, and prove that he's still got what it takes to be a big-time wide receiver in the National Football League. Can this guy still be the old Stefon Diggs that we're used to? It clearly was not as good with the Texans. He wasn't the Stefon Diggs with the Buffalo Bills when he was with the Texans last year. You know, Stefon Diggs with the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen was lighting it up. But even at the very end of his time with the Bills, there were signs that he was starting to slow down. There were signs that he was starting to become less effective at doing his job. And I think that's part of the reason the Bills were like, okay, this thing has run its course. He's staring down Josh Allen on the sidelines because he's not getting the ball and throwing a tantrum and being a diva. The Vikings didn't look back at all when they traded this guy. They got better with Justin Jefferson, and they had less bullshit they had to deal with. The Bills, when they sent this guy packing, did they fall off a cliff? Would they draft Keon Coleman, who is still working his way up the depth chart, probably a third or fourth receiver, working up the depth chart? Did the Bills fall off a cliff despite that? No, they didn't. Stefon Diggs goes to the Texans, gets injured, and maybe because of some of the stuff he's doing off the field, maybe he wasn't as focused, maybe he wasn't as disciplined. And don't get me wrong, after the injury, he's been disciplined, he's been focused, he's been doing everything he can to rehab himself, but then he squanders all that progress away by being caught on a boat, passing around whatever he was passing around. It was a pink substance. Was it a marijuana edible? Was it something more hard, or a hard drug? Don't get me wrong, with marijuana legalization, if it's a marijuana edible, it's a bad look just because you're a representative of a team and you're getting paid a bunch of money. But, you know, with legalization, we have to kind of keep up with the times, and it's a bad look. but okay, we can move on. But if it's something hard where he's passing around hard drugs to a bunch of girls on a boat, now we're talking about someone that has some serious issues that might need to be dealt with. If you're numbing yourself with a serious hardcore drug like a pink cocaine or whatever, 2CB, whatever they were saying it was, or whatever substance it was, now you're dealing with someone that has some serious issues when it comes to their character. They have some unresolved traumas that they need better coping mechanisms with, whether they go to a therapist or a psychiatrist and talk to someone and get those issues resolved. I mean, there's not, like exercise, therapists, psychiatrists, when it comes to dealing with these unresolved traumas and these issues these guys have from early on in their lives or whatever it may be, the healthy choices, if you really think about it, there's not that many healthy choices. The healthy choices are pretty simple. Exercise, therapists, psychiatrists, hobbies, getting immersed in your work, family, friends. Think about it. Those are the ways out when it comes to your unresolved traumas and your deep-rooted issues. That, to me, on my fingers, I got 7 different options. What's the worst possible option that you could do? Numbing yourself with a hard drug, like this pink substance that was seen floating around in this video. So now the Patriots are deciding whether or not they should even keep Stefon Diggs. Stop and think about that. A guy that they just overpaid for. They're now debating whether or not they should cut him before he even plays a single game for the Patriots. How do you think that's going to impact Stefon Diggs if he does get cut? If he does get cut. That's it for him. It's over. It's over. You think some other team's going to want to come and take a chance on this guy after he just got a huge opportunity as an aging wide receiver and coming off an injury by the Patriots where they overpaid for him and he turns around and squanders it by passing out a pink substance to these girls on a boat? You think some other team's going to want to sign up for that with all his drama and all his antics, all his trade requests? You think some other team wants to sign up for that? I'll tell you what, if I'm running a team, I will bite the bullet for a year and be lackluster in my passing attack, and I'll draft a guy next year that has high character and that's going to be a positive factor in the locker room. Maybe he doesn't make the plays that Stefon Diggs makes, but at least I know he's not going to be toxic and a cancer in my locker room, and at least I know he's not going to be passing out pink substances to all my other players. At least I know he's not going to be taking the rest of my guys in my locker room out to the club or out on a boat and getting them into nonsense and a bunch of bullshit. Can you say the same thing about Stefon Diggs? Now if I'm a GM or a guy in the front office and I see Stefon Diggs, I'm like, I don't want that guy anywhere near my team. I'm trying to build a winner. I'm trying to win championships. I'm trying to give these fans in the city something. It's not just the wins, it's also the economic impact. When you're having success and fans come to those games, think about all those transactions that the vendors get. The vendors at the game and all those transactions that they have, it stimulates the economy. Think about when all those people go to a stadium, the gas stations they stop at, the restaurants they stop at, all the other shopping and stuff they do. That's called a positive economic impact. I'm trying to win games. I'm trying to win a championship and have a positive economic impact for the city that I represent. How can I do those things with a guy like Stefon Diggs who's squandering every opportunity that he gets? You can't do it. You can't do it. I don't care how talented he is. I don't care about how much he rehabbed and how hard he worked to come back from that injury. It's the same song and dance with Stefon Diggs. It's either him pouting and demanding a trade or getting caught up in some bullshit. Very talented individual who probably could have had an even better career if he just put away the bullshit and turned his back on this nonsense. But for whatever reason, hasn't been able to do it. It's constantly been a cancer and has constantly been toxic in these locker rooms. The way he treated Josh Allen at that, him forcing his way out of the Vikings. I can't deal with that, man. Like I said, I would bite the bullet and deal with a lackluster passing attack for a year and draft a second or third round wide receiver, somebody who's dying and licking his chops at the opportunity to be a part of something, to be a professional, to prove that he's worthy of being a player in the National Football League. I'll take my chances with that over an aging wide receiver coming off an injury and that has character concerns. Any day. Done with Stefon Diggs, man. Done with that nonsense he always brings to the table. And just over it. Over all the distractions with the guy. It's not worth it. It's not worth it, man. How much better did the Texans get when he was on there? They were better 2 years ago. They were better 2 years ago before he got there. They took a step back when he got there. C.J. Stroud took a step back when he got there. That's not supposed to happen. Doesn't that tell you something? If you're the Patriots, you want this guy around Drake May? Drake May, who's supposed to be the savior of your franchise? You want Stefon Diggs around your young quarterback who's very impressionable? No way, man. Now, do you cut him? I don't know. That's a lot of money, you know. I don't know exactly what, cutting him entails off the top of my head. I just can't believe that Stefon Diggs put the Patriots in that situation. I assume they're going to have to eat a bunch of money. if they cut him before he even steps on the field. Salary cap hit, the whole 9 yards. But at this point, you start to weigh your options. Do I want him around Drake May? If I'm being honest, and I'm just being honest with you, you almost can't cut him. You can't eat that. And it's garbage. It's garbage because what Stefon Diggs is doing to the Patriots. Because when you invest that type of money, you almost can't eat it right away. You have to keep him. And that means Stefon Diggs has handcuffed the Patriots. After they just looked out for him, hasn't even played a game yet, and he's already handcuffing them. They can't cut him and eat that contract. They have to stick with him. And he's already putting them in a bind before he's even played one game for them. The Patriots should have known better. They knew this guy's history. If you follow football, you knew this guy has always been problematic. You want the guy that's staring down your quarterback in a playoff game because he's not getting the ball? I mean, Josh Allen, if he could, would throw the ball to Stefon Diggs as many times as he possibly could. There's other factors that go into a game, like the offensive line breaking down, like defenses rolling coverage towards Stefon Diggs. It's not always as black and white as just throw me the ball. Sometimes forcing that pass is going to lead to multiple turnovers, and the defense is forcing Josh Allen to throw to the other receivers. That's how football works. It's a chess match. I think the Patriots front office and their decision makers, they got to eat this one. This is on them because they should have known better. They should have known about the character concerns. They should have known Stefon Diggs is problematic. They're the ones to blame for this because he shouldn't have been anywhere near this franchise. You don't overpay for an aging wide receiver that's coming off an injury that's also got character concerns. That's 3 negatives. You go down the list. Negative, negative, negative. I want 3 positives. Positive, positive, positive. which is what the Vikings got when they shipped him out and drafted Justin Jefferson. Positive, positive, positive. Justin Jefferson was willing to play, even if he didn't get his contract right away. He was still willing to go out there and play because he's a team player. The Vikings put Stefon Diggs on the map, and then he still forces his way out. Still forces his way out. Also forces his way out of Buffalo too. Then gets hurt with the Texans. Trade request, injured. Three last teams, the way it ended, trade request, injured. Hasn't ended good with the past three teams. And now on his fourth team with the Patriots, not even a game into his career with the Patriots, or his time with the Patriots, I guess you can say, he's already put them in a bind. Not good, Stefon Diggs. And if this thing goes south and no one comes knocking on the door and nobody wants you, look in the mirror because you have nobody to blame but yourself. Moving on, we got the Geno Smith story. So people are already saying Geno Smith can be an X factor for the Raiders. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am buying this story and I'm buying that take. Because I saw Geno Smith last year playing with the Seahawks and he was throwing the football all over the place. Maybe the Seahawks didn't have as much success as they wanted to, but Geno Smith was elevating that team. He was not holding them back in any way, shape, or form. He was elevating that team. It was just the team as a whole didn't have enough to have the success that they wanted to have. Geno Smith was a bright spot for that Seahawks team. The guy can play. He can throw the football all over the place. He puts up big play after big play. The offense looks more explosive when he's at the helm. There's a reason when Pete Carroll took control of this Raiders team, one of the very first things he did was say, I got to go get Geno Smith. And Mark Davis, Tom Brady, everybody signed off on it. Everybody was in. Tom Brady's not going to sign off on a bad quarterback. He knows that the Geno Smith early on in his career to the Geno Smith that we know now are a night and day difference. Geno Smith early on in his career couldn't play, couldn't get it right. Geno Smith now, an absolute baller. Somewhere between point A and point B, Geno Smith transformed himself from a guy that was incompetent to a guy that can get the job done. To me, maybe it was being, sitting behind Russell Wilson for a little bit and just seeing how he goes about the game. Maybe it was being around Pete Carroll and being in Pete Carroll's system. We talked about earlier in this podcast, being around the right coach and the right system and the right personnel and in a system that's conducive to the environment or to that player's success. Those things can transform a player. It happened with Geno Smith. He's a perfect example of that. Because Geno Smith, when he got to the Seahawks, was a different player than we saw Geno Smith, with the Jets? Totally different player. So when the Seahawks, for whatever reason, which does not make sense to me, they wanted Sam Darnold instead, that seems like a step backwards. I'm just being real with you. Right now, at this very instant, and I don't care what Sam Darnold did in the Vikings, because he was also another guy that got in a good system with a good coach and good personnel, and then we finally saw the real Sam Darnold, who's a guy that can play. It doesn't matter, because if you compare Geno Smith now to Sam Darnold now, I'm telling you right now, Geno Smith is better. Geno Smith is better. And the Raiders being able to pluck this guy away from the Seahawks because the Seahawks wanted to move off him for Sam Darnold, I do not like that move at all for the Seahawks. And I think this was a big, big steal for the Raiders. And obviously Tom Brady feels the same way because the best quarterback we've ever seen is an expert at evaluating quarterbacks. He's not going to sign off on a guy that he doesn't believe in. But Mark Davis, Tom Brady, and Pete Carroll all signed off on this guy because he's not the same player that he used to be in the past. We used to laugh at this guy. We used to laugh at Geno Smith, and he was the butt of the jokes, and you didn't want to be like Geno Smith. Somewhere from him being the laughing stock of the league and his time with the Seahawks, it all changed. It all changed. This guy has evolved. He's a different player, a guy that has become the best version of himself. And you have to applaud Geno Smith for that because he sat there with the clipboard and watched. And while sitting there with the clipboard and watching, he prepared and he bided his time. And he waited for his moment. Now we're seeing the things he did in private, because you win in private before you win publicly. You do the right things in private. You're in the weight room. You're getting up early. You're studying film. You're throwing all the time. You're doing the little things right in private, and then it starts to show publicly. Clearly, that's been the case with Geno Smith. So now that he's with the Raiders, and people are saying he can be the X Factor, I know it's true. I already know it's true because I seen him last year with the Seahawks. Particularly, I saw that Lions game against the Seahawks and the Lions because I am a Lions fan. And I'm like, wow, Geno Smith is an absolute baller. He is tough, man. Like, the way he just kept fighting back for the Seahawks team and making plays down the field, getting his guys involved, and that never give up attitude. You can win with a guy like that. The Raiders can win with a guy like that. That's what you want. You want a catalyst for your football team. Someone that the other players on this team can feed off his energy. And Geno Smith is that player now. And he was really good at West Virginia. And for some reason, coming out of West Virginia and going to the pros, maybe it's just the Jets, it didn't work out. But he has fulfilled his potential. He's a guy that is a lightning rod for this never give up attitude. He is so tough, man, the way he plays the quarterback position. I'm telling you, I love the way he plays the quarterback position. He does not roll over at all. And when you get in the National Football League where you're getting all this pressure put on you in these game situations, these defenses have great players on these defensive fronts, big hitters at the linebacker position, lockdown corners, big-time safeties, the best players we've ever seen in this sport. You have all this pressure, not to mention the media circus that comes along with being in the pros. All the other pressure you got to deal with, and you got a guy that's a fighter at the quarterback position, someone that is above resilient. You have resilient, and then you have that next level. Part of his journey tells you that he's that next level above resilient. How do you go from a guy that's the laughing stock of the league to a guy that's an absolute baller? You have to be that next level above resilient just to make that transition. It doesn't happen. It's rare that happens. You have to be a thick-skinned and tough individual just to pull that off. And the way I saw him last year when I saw him play, I think the Raiders are going to be really happy. And I 100% buy this take that he can be the X factor for the Raiders. I know they got Brock Bowers, who is probably going to be the best tight end in football someday. I know they got Ashton Jenney, who has a real shot at being the best running back in football. Jacoby Myers, very underrated, outstanding player. But if Geno Smith ends up being the X factor for this whole team, I will not be surprised because the guy is a fighter. And you don't see too many quarterbacks in the league that fight like that. Don't get me wrong, Patrick Mahomes is supremely talented. Josh Allen is supremely talented. But when you have a fighter at the quarterback position, it's just a different level. Like, those guys are more talented than Geno Smith. There's no debating that. But you just have this guy that never backs down, that never folds, that always keeps getting back up no matter how many punches he takes. There's something so inspiring to a team about that. And while like I said, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, those guys are all more talented than Geno Smith. But one thing Geno Smith does really well is the guy's a fighter. He's not going to fold on you, ever. And there's something very inspiring about that when it comes to football. Just watch. You're going to see it this year. Moving on, we have the George Pickens story. So the Steelers sent George Pickens packing, and George Pickens had some character concerns. A lot of times you'd see him pouting on the sidelines, and Mike Tomlin ultimately decided, I'm over this. It's not good for this team. The guy's supremely talented, but I can't deal with the nonsense anymore. So they sent him packing, and who goes and gets George Pickens? Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this is a very Cowboys move because the Cowboys love to go get a player that has character concerns, and for some reason, say what you want about the Dallas Cowboys, say what you want about Jerry Jones, but when they've went out and got these guys with character concerns and brought them in, for some reason, a lot of times these players have done well in the Cowboys system. I'm just being real with you. I'm just telling you like it is. And maybe it's the big brand, the highest valued franchise in all sports, the spotlight that they have on the Cowboys. The Cowboys drive the ratings for the whole entire National Football League. When you see these huge games with these, 30 million people watching, this huge audience, it's usually a Cowboys game. Cowboys Giants, Cowboys Eagles, those type of games. Cowboys are always the common denominator in these games that have 30 million people watching. So maybe these guys that have issues and, they get shipped out by these teams because they have character concerns, when they go to the Cowboys and Jerry Jones brings them in, they're not as problematic anymore. And I think maybe it's because all eyes are on the Cowboys and they kind of get their fix when it comes to attention and popularity. Now, I don't know, maybe Jerry Jones is just a great mentor and a good dude. Think about, like, I heard Pac-Man Jones talk about how much he loves and cares about Jerry Jones and how good Jerry Jones was to him. Maybe George Pickens can be the next guy who had issues with the Steelers and was frustrated with his time with the Steelers, but he goes to the Cowboys and they kind of reel him in a little bit. Because we've seen it before. I've seen it so many times. I'm thinking about the Panthers defensive end who, maybe he's not the best example because he cussed out a coach, but there's been examples throughout history where the Cowboys have went and got problematic players, and they've done much better with the Cowboys. But the reality is, on the field, you have CeeDee Lamb on one side, you have George Pickens on the other side, and you have Dak Prescott with these two big-time weapons on each side of the field. And this team has been missing a little bit of something since Amari Cooper left. So to slide George Pickens opposite of CeeDee Lamb and kind of fill the shoes that have yet to be filled since Amari Cooper left with George Pickens, I think that's going to help this team. I think they're going to be explosive. You look at CeeDee Lamb, one of the best receivers in the league, big-time plays, incredible athlete, a guy that plays above the rim. I know that's a basketball term, but a guy that can elevate above the defender and make the catch. So athletic, the acrobatic catches, and then you have George Pickens, a slasher on the other side who can take a slant, go upfield, and go to the house. I just think the Cowboys are going to be explosive, and I do think for all the heat that Dak Prescott takes, I think Dak Prescott can throw a nice football. I think he throws the ball better than people think. Now, sometimes he needs to do a better job protecting the football, but I think when it comes to his precision passing and throwing a catchable ball and being able to make a lot of throws on the field, I do think he is very good at doing those things. So I think compared to what George Pickens had with the Steelers, where they're kind of playing musical chairs, trying to figure out just who can play quarterback for them. Is it Justin Fields? Is it Russell Wilson? Is it Mason Rudolph? Is it, instead of that, at least they have one guy in Dak Prescott where George Pickens and him can get on the same page. They can work things out and get it together. And I think opposite CeeDee Lamb is going to help George Pickens too, because you have to double CeeDee Lamb, and now George Pickens is in single coverage. I think he can thrive in those single coverage matchups. And if there's something that's going to keep a receiver happy and avoid him from pouting on the sidelines, it's him thriving in this offense, which I think he's certainly capable of doing with the Cowboys. So, yeah, I think this might actually be a good fit for George Pickens, because the Cowboys do have a history of taking in these cast-off players with bad character concerns, and Adam Pac-Man Jones, who gets in trouble but somehow loves Jerry Jones and respects everything Jerry Jones does. I think George Pickens can be the next guy to come in and be in an environment where he's got a lot of attention on him, where he can be the best version of himself and thrive in this offense. So I think in terms of George Pickens, who thinks things could be even better, when he's with the Steelers, he thinks things can be even better. I think that better could actually be the Cowboys for George Pickens. This might be a really good fit for George Pickens, because he has this mega billionaire in Jerry Jones, who's already mentored guys who've gotten in trouble in the past and has helped them. I think being around this franchise with all that they bring to the table in terms of, $10 billion franchise, the highest value franchise in sports, the huge ratings, the huge audience, the huge following, those things might be what George Pickens is looking for. I think George Pickens is going to be happy. I think he's going to be happy. I think he'll fit in well with that team. I think, surprisingly, people are like, the Cowboys are a mess, they're trash. I actually am going to push back on this one. I think this might actually be a really good fit for George Pickens. I think it might be a good matchup between, what he had with the Steelers and what he has now with the Cowboys. It was a bad match with George Pickens and the Steelers. I think it can be a really good match with George Pickens and the Cowboys, is really what I'm trying to say. That's all I got for this latest episode of the Football Game Tonight podcast. I'm John Kuzma. Check us out wherever podcasts are found. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm John Kuzma. I'm signing off.